Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. In his first video message since the US strikes on nuclear sites in his country, Iran's supreme leader says nothing significant occurred. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has defending the attack during a press conference that President Trump called one of the greatest he's ever seen. Israel's National Security Minister calls for a complete halt of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And celebrities arrive in Venice ahead of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez protested wedding. Iran's supreme leader, Al Khamenei, delivered his first video message since US strikes on his country and Iran's ceasefire with Israel. In a speech that was broadcast by state TV, he said nothing significant occurred to the nuclear sites struck by the US earlier this week. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called the strikes historically successful during a news conference today. Here's more of what Hegseth had to say.
President Trump directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history, and it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement and the end of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. I want to read some of the assessments that have been provided, because whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I haven't had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Dr. Elie Al Hindy, Professor of International Relations at the American University in the Emirates, and Gemma White, Correspondent and columnist. Thank you both so much for joining me this evening. Dr. Elie, let's talk about Pete Hegseth. We just saw him there. He gave a very impassioned press conference. There was no holds barred in it. One of the greatest things he's ever seen is what Donald Trump called the conference, and added uranium wasn't moved before the US strikes on these three nuclear sites in Iran, as some people have been speculating. What a day of show for the US administration.
Indeed, that was what it was. It was a show. It was a show to say a clear message that we think what has been achieved is the greatest thing in the history of humankind. It's a benchmark for humanity. Yet all this American press is not following this, is not covering it as it should, and is trying, on the contrary, to find leaks, to find weak points, to find ways to discredit this, and so on. This what made them really furious, and this what made them bring in the army to explain tactically what happened. And the whole message was simply to reinforce the idea that they destroyed the whole Iranian program. Now, how far is this true or not? This is really not something that we can say for now. We know, to be fair, that the facilities have been hit seriously. The facilities, we can say that they were destroyed. The centrifuge or whatever they use for the mechanisms to produce or enrich uranium were destroyed, but then we don't know if the enriched uranium was moved or not. And more importantly, if the facilities were destroyed, does not mean that the Iranian program is completely obliterated, as he used the term, because the program has the mines in it, the know-how, the people, but also other facilities that maybe we don't know about.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many questions surrounding it, but I think today it was a really show of strength from everybody within the White House. General Dan Kane was there alongside Pete Hegseth, and some of the images they showed of the weaponry that was designed to hit these places was like nothing we've ever seen before, and it was really a show of power coming from the administration.
I think, sorry to interrupt, simply the fact that the president chose that the planes will go from the US, from Arizona, fly all the way to the Middle East, do the hit and return is in itself a show of force, is in itself a show of power to say this is what we can do, even if we don't have bases in the Middle East, even if we don't have our boats or our military ships, we can still do it. We can still fight the war anywhere around the world.
Showing their reach, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating stuff that we saw. But Gemma, we saw Pete Hegseth there just briefly, and he was a former Fox News presenter. That's something we can't forget. But wow, he's really gone out all guns blazing against the US media and their reporting on these US strikes in Iran.
His style in that press conference was very Fox, you know, very confrontational. You can tell that he used to be on the network. He was really fired up. And what I found fascinating is the very thing he accused the media of, which is coming up with all these facts a day and a half after, you know, the strikes have happened, is exactly the same thing the administration is, telling us all these things that have happened a day and a half after, you know, the strikes have happened. And as we know, there's been no, you know, independent, you know, assessors from the UN going in there to kind of look at the damage, see what's done. So there is still a lot of, you know, there's a lot that's unknown, but he's, you know, been accusatory against the media. And I think this is very, I mean, he's a Trump man, so, and this is what they do. If something's reported that they don't like, they don't agree with, if it's critical, it's instantly fake news, it's to be disregarded. So, yeah, that's to be expected. I think what's so interesting is that there are conflicting reports. You know, there's conflicting reports from the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. He said the nuclear site was severely damaged. And then you have the leaked report from the US Defense Intelligence Agency, which claimed that the impact was minimal. So even from your own administration, there's conflicting reports.
But what is interesting, and Hegseth did mention this in his speech, he did say that was a preliminary report, and they are wrong. And that's something that he said is often you can't rely on a preliminary report. I don't know.
But even the
how true
parts
that is.
he quoted from the report shows that the report says this is what the info we have for now, and so much could be unknown, and so much could be learned as we go. And this is an ongoing assessment. So yes, definitely, if you don't have any info on what's happening on the ground, you would say only what you've seen on TV. But then this is where the serious work starts, with your operatives in Iran, with your intelligence sharing and all that information. But is it unpatriotic to discredit such a huge win by the US? This is, I think, where the debate should be, or this is where he tried to take the debate.
I mean, it's very much I think George Bush used to say it as well, if you're not with us, you're against us. So there's no grey areas here, it's black or white. But you were saying earlier as well about sort of showing all the military hardware. Trump wants to have a big procession, doesn't he? He's talked about having one of those big military processions.
Oh, he did have one recently.
Did.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and
so
that was for
this
his birthday.
Not really. It coincided.
It coincided with his 79th birthday.
So there's a lot of this going
yeah.
on right now. There's a lot of, look at my hardware, look at what I've got, you know, look at what I want to show off. Yeah, I mean, you wonder what comes next, to be honest with you.
But then in politics, we say a show of power is power. And you can coerce enemies into doing stuff simply by showing your power without even using it. So it is part of his game. And he always said, I want to achieve peace through power. So it makes sense. It's just coherent with what he has been saying. But we have to see how really effective will he be in reaching to an agreement. Because no matter how hard the hit was, if you don't reach an agreement that keeps the nuclear program under check, under international transparency, then anything can be built up again and tensions might rise again soon.
And it's quite interesting because today I do know that Iran has put in a law almost that they don't want
to withdraw from the non-proliferation.
Yeah, so to withdraw from the IAEA, the nuclear watchdogs.
Yeah.
So that again raises further concerns because who can really go in and access the damage and see what the truth is behind it? Because Iran are saying because we've been attacked by Israel and the US, we have now the right to withdraw from that. So that moves them either further away from the negotiating table because that's obviously going to upset Israel and the US.
We've seen that there is no date set after they said there might be a meeting next week, and now we just learned that there is no date yet. But again, I think Iran would be really playing with fire if they don't go to a negotiation, because hits might re-escalate in a blink of an eye, and they have the reason for it. And they've done it for much less reasons, whether Israel or the US. So I think Iran doesn't really have much choice to go to negotiation. They might, of course, try to play their cards and try to get the highest price for their nuclear program, but I don't think they can afford not to go to negotiations.
But Gemma, when I was watching that press conference a little bit earlier with Pete Hegseth, I was wondering, what is the point of this conference? And I thought, is it showing that there's paranoia at the moment within the US administration? Because, you know, the US going and carrying out these airstrikes in Iran was highly controversial in the Trump supporters base. And we saw people like Tucker Carlson, who's very influential online and a huge Trump supporter, you know, calls Trump all the time. They're really good friends, you know, really against this because it's almost going against the America First policy.
Yeah. I think when you're that aggressive in a press conference, it's quite a smokescreen, isn't it? You're trying to create enough, almost diversion. You know, you look at me, I'm being loud and it's like a magician's trick, really. You look over this way so that, you know, I can do something else you know, with this hand. But Tucker Carlson, that was very interesting because he has been, you know, the man on Trump's side for so long.
Absolutely.
Trump would have felt that personally as well, because as we know, he is quite thin-skinned and he does take things quite personally. And so recently, obviously, the loss of Elon as the right-hand man, the loss of Tucker Carlson, who would have been a close friend, that does cause organizations, administrations to kind of hunker down and become, you know, you sort of start to see everything as a threat, don't you? And that's what I see. Hegseth, he was attacking before he could be attacked.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting conference from Hegseth, almost a little bit revealing. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Stay right there. We're going to go on to another story. And Israel's National Security Minister has called for a complete halt of humanitarian aid into Gaza. He claims that Hamas is taking control of the supplied goods. Meanwhile, rescuers say Israeli forces killed at least 35 people in the region. Earlier, I spoke to our correspondent in Tel Aviv, Trent Murray, who gave me the latest and the plan over the next few days.
This has all started after videos started circulating yesterday showing dozens of masked men riding on several aid trucks in the north of the Gaza Strip. Now, some of them were carrying rifles, and what that has prompted now is this fairly huge decision by the Israeli government to halt aid deliveries into the Gaza Strip, reportedly to avoid the aid being put into the hands of Hamas. That is their rationale. Now, we are being told that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked the Israeli Defense Force to come up with a plan within the next 2 days in order to try and prevent some of the scenes that we saw yesterday. But we do know that certainly humanitarian groups on the ground are really concerned about this unilateral decision being made by the Israelis to halt the delivery of food, baby formula, fresh water and the like, given the existing humanitarian crisis on the ground. We are being told that the American-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation does have an exemption, but it is only operating in the south of Gaza. So the focus right now is on the delivery of aid into the northern part of the Strip, where we do know a number of civilians are in need of it.
Gemma, the spotlight back on Gaza, and we just heard from Trent there. But what are aid organisations and charities now saying about this really concerning complete halt?
Well, the UN has not held back with their criticism of this apparently two-day halt, initially 2 days. Thamin Al-Kitan, he's the spokesman for the UN Human Rights Office. He said Israel's militarized humanitarian assistance mechanism is in contradiction with international standards on aid distribution. So he's saying they're contravening, what they should be doing legally. He also called it the weaponization of food for civilians. So using aid or halting aid as a weapon against the people. And then he said it was up for the courts to decide whether or not a war crime had been committed. Now, he wasn't the only one. There was Philippe Lazzarini, who's the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, and he went as far. He called it an abomination that humiliates and degrades desperate people, and he also referred to it as a death trap. Now, this is in regards to the GHF. So the 2 attacks on Palestinians recently have happened near GHF distribution centres. And there were claims that Palestinians were, trying to overrun distribution centres. Obviously, these are desperate people trying to get, water and food and aid. But that was used as the excuse for opening fire on these people. So the UN has not held back at all.
And yesterday, I actually spoke to the UNRWA media spokesperson for Gaza. And when we were speaking, the UN had said more than 410 Palestinians are reported to have been killed by Israeli gunfire since GAF work actually began there in May. So this is hundreds of people, almost a daily occurrence when people just try to go and get the basic food.
But this is so expected because, as we've said so many times on this program, that the whole infrastructure for distributing aid is not there. The whole work of international organizations like UN organizations or other internationally respected organizations have been discredited, have been accused of supporting Hamas, have been kicked out of Gaza. So the only institution that is still left and that is allowed to work is that organization, the GHF, with all its controversy, with all its private security, shooting at people whenever they feel insecure. And guess what's going to happen when you have a couple of trucks for 2 million people who are desperate and whose children are hungry? This is the only reaction. This is so expected. And Israel carries the full responsibility since they are the only de facto authority on the ground. And the terms that were used were not, I think, used by accident. Of course, he's going to say the courts will decide, but these are the exact words that exist in the Geneva Convention in the description of crimes against humanity. When you withhold humanitarian aid, it is a crime of war.
And I think also the UN have said that just so many people, it said the UN warned last month that Israel's 20-month offensive have left the entire population at risk of famine.
Exactly.
And, GHF, like you said, isn't bringing in that much aid. It's just trickles of aid, and it's a desperate situation. But Netanyahu, Dr. Elie, let's talk about his domestic political situation, because he's got a domestic political situation happening in Israel. We can't forget that. It's been ongoing for many years. But he's asked the court to postpone his testimony in his corruption trial that he's currently going through. Do you think this will happen? What more do we know about this?
Well, let's start by currently. It's been 5 years. That court against him for corruption has been going on since 2020. And he has always found ways to postpone and to get himself out of the corners. And this, of course, as we know, was a big issue, a big confrontation between him and the judiciary right before the Gaza elections. And he almost lost the majority in the parliament. And then all of a sudden, the Gaza conflict came, and then he is hailed as a hero. and now furthermore after the attacks of Iran. This is a person who has built his political career on wars, and he claims to have a messianic mission to save Israel and to protect the free world and so on. This is a standard rhetoric that he says. It's not like hearsay about him or analysis. These are the things that he himself says. So this is a person who knows that as soon as the war stops, he's going to be facing all the internal demons, be it divisions within the government, be it his corruption accusations, be it the ICC trial, who still has the arrest warrant against him, or any other things that he needs to face.
But even Donald Trump actually put on social media that these corruption charges should be dropped against Netanyahu, and that's something we haven't seen, you know, a US intervention on such a scale.
Exactly, and the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, said, I don't think a president, we thank the US for its support, but I don't think a foreign president should interfere and tell the judiciary what it should or shouldn't do. So, and Trump, of course, calls it as a witch hunt, similar to the one, of course, that he accused the judiciary in the US of going against him simply for political reasons, while, as he said about Netanyahu, he should be hailed as a hero, as a historical hero for Israel. So a lot of politics into that is weighing in on the judiciary, but I do believe that the judiciary will give him the benefit of the doubt, since they are still in a case of war. They wouldn't trial a prime minister while at war. But we have to also remember that Israel has put several prime ministers in prison after the end of their office term.
Absolutely. It's the country's known for doing that, but just what Israel have said in defense of this halting aid is that there were masked gunmen on top of the aid trucks who they believed they were Hamas. Other clans who are armed gangs have said, actually, it was us, the likes of Fatah, another political party. So it just seems to be a really complicated scene inside Gaza.
Indeed. I think we know for a fact that even Netanyahu and the Israeli government have, said clearly that they did support and they did give weapons to some Arabian tribes in Gaza to stand in the face of Hamas. We know for sure the Fatah and the Palestinian Authority definitely would like to step back into Hamas if they have, into Gaza if they have the chance. So it could be this, yes, but then again, it's going to only add powder to the fire that is already there, putting in more weapons, putting in more conflicts and internal divisions. It's only going to serve the continuation of war, and the instability is going to be only at the expense of civilians and the poor people who are literally starving to death.
Yeah, absolutely tragic what's happening there. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Now let's move on. And the murder trial of an Australian woman accused of poisoning her relatives using the world's most toxic mushroom is nearing its dramatic conclusion. Justice Christopher Bale is delivering his final instructions to the jury, and she says he's expect members will be sent out to deliberate as early as Monday next week. Patrick Falk reports.
Key personnel in a case that's gripped Australia seen leaving court. Crown prosecutor Nanette Rogers kept her head down as she departed. Defence lawyer Colin Mandy's expression gave little away. For the past 8 weeks, they've argued for and against 50-year-old Erin Patterson. The mother of two is accused of lacing a beef Wellington lunch with death-cap mushrooms to elderly relatives of her estranged husband, killing 3 of them. Dozens of people have turned out daily for a seat in the public gallery to witness a trial peppered with drama.
Yeah, so I am a true crime fanatic, so I do take my true crime quite seriously. I don't think I really appreciated that a case of this magnitude was playing out in my own state, so that's what intrigued me, that's what fascinated me.
So while the trial's gone for 8 weeks, it's been interesting to sit through yesterday and hear the way the judge summarised everything.
On Thursday, Justice Christopher Beale told the jury to dismiss a key prosecution argument that if Erin Patterson's children had eaten scraped-off meat from the lunch, they would have experienced symptoms. He said there was no expert evidence on whether that would be the case. But he also reminded them of her alleged incriminating conduct, including lying about using dried mushrooms from an Asian grocery, disposing of a dehydrator at the local tip, and handing police a secondary phone instead of her main one, which hasn't been found. All macabre details that have made the town of Morwell, 2 hours east of Melbourne, a centre of global attention and helped local businesses boom.
It's been talked about, and everyone's got an opinion about it, so life will go on, life moves on, and the town will go back to what it was before, and that'll be it.
The big question on people's minds, how did the death cap mushrooms end up in the meal? Ian Wilkinson is the sole survivor of the 4 guests who dined with Patterson. He's the uncle of her husband, Simon, whose parents and aunt were poisoned to death. Had he not survived, it may have been difficult piecing together events that led to the tragedy. Patrick Falk, Al Arabiya.
Protesters in Venice claimed victory after they forced Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez to change some of their wedding plans. The main celebration, originally expected to take place in the heart of the city, will now be moved to an isolated area. The billionaire Amazon founder and his fiancée arrived this week for a 3-day event that's expected to be attended by celebrity guests. Earlier, I caught up with journalist Elena Trabatoni, who told me about the new venue.
Now, the location of one of the events, the Sunday event, has been changed to the Arsenal of Venice, which is a shipyard complex with a very high fortified wall around it, which is impossible to get into or out of if you want to. Unless you have the permission and access and guided entrance and exit. So that will be very secure. But right behind me is where the celebrations will be kicking off tonight. Behind me, and it's already in lockdown, local authorities have put it into lockdown now. There's police all over around surrounding the area and also in the canals. Is the Santa Madonna dell'Orto Chiesa Church, and the celebrations tonight will be kicking off in a cloisters right next to it. We may even start seeing the first guests come in.
There we go. We've heard from Elena. We have spoken about this wedding before. Dr. Elie and I are really excited. But Gemma, tell us about the protest update. What has been going on?
Do you know what? I'm watching this and I'm seeing Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos waving, and I'm thinking, who are you waving to?
She's like the Queen when she comes out to get on a boat. She's like this. Yeah.
Lady, they do not want you there.
Oh,
please.
She's waving to
She's
the
waving for
protesters.
the press. Come on.
Oh, to the protesters.
And the press is there.
She's Marie Antoinette for the ages. Yes, so the protesters, they've claimed this as an enormous victory. And I'm going to let them have that. I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay.
So this is the
Thank
no
you,
space.
Gemma.
This is the no space for Bezos group. Now, they've joined forces with the Everyone Hates Elon group. Again, I'm very amused by this.
Are these people being paid to be protesters? Because they don't sound like they've got much else going on.
I just like their name. I like the way they've named themselves. They're the ones who unfurled the big banner in Piazza San Marco. And
Pay
it's
your taxes.
Yes, it was a big picture of Bezos, and it said, if you can rent Venice for your wedding, then you can pay more taxes. So these two groups have joined together, and they have, I guess they have succeeded in the wedding being moved, because from the start, they always said this isn't about, we're not against two people getting married. They were against the exploitation and violation of their city. That they've been quite
I
firm
really
from
cannot
the
see
start.
where's the exploitation. If you go and rent a venue and get married and invite all the celebrities, where's the exploitation in that?
I think it's because of, obviously, allegations that Amazon does not treat their staff very well.
Or hasn't paid its fair share.
Hasn't
of
paid
tax.
its taxes.
That's a different story. Come on, these are two
That is
happy people who
exploitation.
want to get married. And
Well, again, they're not against the marriage. But interestingly, there's been a lot of trying to run interference on this, trying to get ahead of the story. So their wedding planners, Lanza and Balsina, they actually organised George and Amal Clooney's wedding. They organised the wedding of Salma Hayek and Francois-Henri Pinault. well. So, you know, they've organised these big Venice weddings before. And 4 days ago, they came out and they said, from the outset, Lauren and Jeff have always said they've got the utmost respect for the city and its residents. So clearly they had been seeing what was happening on social media and in the news. And then today, which is probably my favourite part of all of this, part of the wedding invitation was leaked. Now, it looks like it was done in Microsoft Word clip art from 1995. It is something that my 12-year-old son could absolutely knock out of the park.
How more humble do you want them to
But
be?
I must say something. When Gemma showed it to me, because I hadn't seen it before Gemma showed it.
You were shocked.
It's a very modest invitation. It's a very nice...
Dr. Elie, I was really shocked. I didn't believe it was true. I thought it was a fake. Because you know, like when you're a child and you invite people to your party...
Collage.
You know, your mother makes those little things, doesn't she? She buys them in a whole pad and then just writes them out.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's what it looked like. And it was really strange.
It looked so amateur. But this was the part of the invitation which said they don't want any gifts. You know, obviously they've got everything that they possibly need, but and they said instead of gifts, we are making contributions in the names of all the celebrity guests to an array of Venetian charities.
Here you go. What better do you want? Come on.
Oh, I'm not disrespecting that at all. I'm disrespecting the clip art on the invitation.
No, me too.
But yes, this is where we're at right now. A change of venue, the joining together of two activist groups, and terrible taste in wedding invitations.
I was worried about moving to that shipyard.
Yeah.
I'm looking out the shipyard.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's a very nice shipyard.
It's really nice.
The word shipyard doesn't conjure up great images.
It looks lovely, doesn't it?
So it's nice.
And I must say something. I was just really fascinated myself because I love celebrity weddings and celebrity news. And I was showing Dr. Elie everyone who's been arriving in Gemma. We've seen the Kardashians
People who I have
arrive.
no clue who they are. But
he now knows who Kim Kardashian is.
He knows who Kris Jenner is now.
And he knows who's Kris Jenner. And then, of course, Orlando Bloom's arrived, all in the speculation that he might have broken up with Katy Perry. Everyone's watching that. And then Oprah. Like, these are big names. But something that baffles me is how does a wedding cost in the region of, like, $50 million? Like, what is that money being sent on? How much is the cake? How much is the... It's obscene.
We thought the goodie bags would be quite good, didn't we?
Yeah.
There's going to be some good stuff.
And then flying the people in, accommodating
but they're so rich,
them.
they could fly themselves
Yeah,
in.
but then you're inviting. It's nice to do a gesture and bring them on a private airplane, and then they are from the mainland to the city, and then, you know, proper accommodation, a cake probably with gold leaves, the security, all that kind of stuff can be quite expensive, but I don't see the problem.
No, I'm a bit...
Remember her 27 outfit changes?
Oh, is that what she's having?
Yes, 27 outfit changes.
Oh, my gosh, I wonder who the designers are.
You're looking at a lot of... well, maybe they'll go quite Italian. Maybe, you know, there'll be a lot of Dolce & Gabbana. Maybe there'll be Bulgari. Yeah, exactly. So that might be a kind of... Hey, look, we're supporting, you know, Italian designers as well.
That's so interesting. No, I find it fascinating. Dr. Elie and I love it for different reasons. He loves it because he's romantic. I love it because all the celebs are arriving. And Gemma loves it because they're all protesting.
It's got something for everyone.
And they are planning more protests. And in that sense, I think it's becoming a bit too much. Every time, and I think it's part of an ideological trend, mostly in Europe, but also somewhere around the world. I don't want to call them the haters, but the lefties, who are against anything that is, in its essence, either, you know, liberal or whatever, in the sense, or capitalist in that sense. So a G7 summit would lead to the destruction of the city. A famous wedding would lead to protests. Sometimes a football game would lead to, you know, it's becoming a bit too much. I can understand if there's allegation against taxation, but then sue the guy. Don't destroy his wedding. You know?
Okay, so
I really don't see the problem in them renting venues in the city and then having the best wedding, no matter how much it costs. I really don't see the problem in that. If they are due to something, if they have broken the law, then it's the courts to decide, not for people in the streets.
I wonder if You know what? It's so interesting when it comes to protesters too, because I'm always like, oh, are they getting paid? Are they bored? But I get your side too, Gemma. But I hope they have a wonderful wedding, and I'll be looking out for her dresses because obviously I do really care. And now we've moved on to that part in the show where Dr. Elie and Gemma, you've come up with a couple of quirky stories. Now, Gemma, your story, I have just seen absolutely everywhere. People have got it on WhatsApp groups. It's all over social media, and it's all about the Marks and Spencer's strawberries and cream sandwich. It's fascinating.
It's the sandwich that has divided the UK.
Oh, it's divided. Why?
It's a Marks and Spencer's sandwich.
Okay.
Some people... You know, the sandwich was invented in the UK. We have a very close relationship with sandwiches.
I did not know that.
Yes, it was invented by the Earl of Sandwich.
Really?
Yes, and...
It's the Earl of Sandwich.
That's his name.
Oh,
He was
there's
the
a-
Sandwich is
Really?
a place.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
So it was
I didn't know that.
hence the
Neither.
name sandwich. And he wanted it invented because he wanted a food that he could hold while he could still play cards with his friends.
Okay.
And the first sandwich was, I think, roast beef between 2 slices of bread. So that little history lesson there.
Wow, that's
So
fascinating.
the British obsession with sandwiches, you know, you have to be there to understand. Everyone's got their favourite sandwich filling. You know, we go to all different stores to buy them, and Marks and Spencer's is where you go for your sandwiches. So this new sandwich is a dessert sandwich. It's 2 pieces of brioche filled with a sweet cream cheese and
Looks
strawberries.
delicious.
It looks so good.
It does look so... we all
amazing.
talked about how we do really want to try this, and can we sneak back to the UK and get one? And obviously it's in time for Wimbledon. Traditionally at Wimbledon, strawberries and cream are served. Some people are up in arms. Sweet sandwiches, you know, what will come next, you know? But if you were, you know, from Southeast Asia, from Asia, you would know that fruit sandwiches there are a huge staple, food staple. Traditionally, they will eat fruit in like a sweetened bread. So that's been a snack for hundreds of years. But it's kind of making minds get blown in the UK.
Gemma, are we sure that Marks and Spencer is paying all his taxes and is not abusing his workers so we can enjoy the
And the
cake?
sandwiches.
So we can enjoy the sandwich.
Let them eat cake, I would say to that.
Or the strawberries are fair trade, I hope, at least. You know what I mean?
I mean, otherwise you would never buy anything or eat anything anywhere, starting from Starbucks to McDonald's to anything. It's going to be a hard life.
But anyway, it's £2.80
£2.80
for the sandwich, and
That's good.
It looks fabulous, doesn't it? I really love it. I
delicious.
like the look of that sandwich. And do you think James Bond would eat a sandwich like that?
No, he's too classy for that.
No, but this is a classy sandwich.
Well, James Bond is coming back. That's the good news from today. This is a story from today. Many people were assuming that there's not going to be any more movies, especially after Greg pulled out earlier than expected, and then there was a halt, and then there was a movement in the ownership of the property right from the original family, the Broccoli, into the Amazon MGM, so the big production company. The news that we have today is that they have decided on the producer, and it's the Oscar-nominated French-Canadian filmmaker, Denis Villeneuve. And he is the one who did Dunes 1 and 2. He is the one who did Blade Runner, and he is the one who did The Arrival. All amazing things, and he is still working on many things. So I think it's going to be a bit later within the year. Until we see probably early 2027, we will see the next James Bond movie. But then the question is, who's the next James Bond?
This is a question, Gemma.
The list is getting shorter. You
Okay.
know, I'm sure everyone's devastated that obviously Idris Elba was the front runner for a long time, but he's too old now. We all know this.
Oh,
you know.
really? I didn't know that.
You need a young chap because
Oh.
you're basically signing your life away for the next 10 years because you're going to do like 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah.
He would have been spectacular. But so top of the list are, you know, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Theo James, who was just in The Gentleman on Netflix.
I love The Gentleman.
James Norton. That divided
Yeah.
Do you know,
all of us earlier, didn't it?
I thought James Norton Norton too. When I wrote a list down earlier, I definitely had James Norton on there. But he's been touted for a really long time. I interviewed James Norton very many years ago. I must have been 10 years ago.
Is he Bond?
Yes. What vibe did you get?
Does he have the Bond qualities?
I remember thinking he was much taller than I imagined him to be. But he was a very nice guy. And I asked him back then, I mean, talking a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so he's been around for ages, maybe a bit old too now.
His name's still in the running.
Still in the running,
Jonathan Bailey from Bridgerton.
Okay.
He's in the running. And then you've got your sort of young up-and-comers. You've got Callum Turner, Harris Dickinson and Josh O'Connor. They're not household names, but then Daniel Craig wasn't a household name when he took on the role.
I think it's a necessity not to be a household name, because then you own it, then you believe in it, and then you stay with it for many years, as Gemma was saying.
Yeah, definitely.
But then none of these is my favorite name. Maybe they're not on the short list, but mine is in Irish called Paul Mescal.
Paul Mescal, yeah.
And then also a Scottish called Jack Lowden.
And Lucy, our producer, was really keen on Jack. She mentioned him
I like
earlier.
these guys a lot. I've liked the movies that they have done. I disliked Daniel Craig a lot. Yes, I'm sorry to say that, but...
Controversially.
He likes Bezos, he doesn't like Daniel Craig. I don't know what's
Controversially, I know this is going to be
I think he's too pale to be a James Bond.
Can I tell you what, Daniel Craig, I know it's controversial, but I loved him as James Bond.
Yeah,
I think he was actually my all-time favourite. I know we've got the greats like Pierce Brosnan and them, but for me, Daniel Craig, he was just a bit rough around the edges.
That's not how James Bond is supposed to be.
Oh,
you like suave?
He's supposed to be the very classy gentleman.
I loved it. And do you remember the Venice one, if we're going to connect it to Venice? But you remember when he came out in that swimming trunks? I was sold.
That broke the internet,
Not me. But then again, me and Lucy agreed again that Sean Connery is the best James Bond ever, and not all the others. There's been so many votes. I was looking online, and there has been so many votes to rank which is your favorite James Bond. For me, it's definitely Sean Connery. And again, a non-English guy, a Scottish guy. I don't know, maybe I have something
against the English.
In favor of the Scottish and Irish. Not in this team, not in this company. I don't dare say it. No.
We'll have to take you to Scotland, Dr. Elie. But it's so fascinating, isn't it? And I really have missed James Bond. It's one of those series that I do love to watch, and they're always so well done. And it'll be really interesting to see a new director come in and a change of what we've become so used to with Daniel Craig.
I think he will bring in a beautiful addition. He has done amazing work in his other work, Villeneuve, we're saying. And I think he will make very nice Bond movies, at least 2-3 to come. Looking forward, really.
No, I'm excited about it. Bond, James Bond, you know, all of those. What was the favourite drink of his? Oh, well.
Shaken, not stirred.
Shaken, not stirred, yeah. And so thanks so much to tonight's guest, Dr. Elie Al Hindy, Professor of International Relations at the American University in the Emirates, and a Gemma White correspondent and columnist. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. G&T with Tom Burgess-Watson is coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.